joining me. Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful and honestly personal stories in the entire book of Deuteronomy. We're talking about the final mission of Moses.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if you poured 40 years of your life into a single goal, leading your people through struggle, sacrifice, you name it, only to be told at the very last step, sorry, you can't go in? It's an absolutely heartbreaking scenario, and it's the core of Moses' final days.
But before we get to that really tough moment, we have to understand the incredible victory that happened right before it. See, on the very edge of the Promised Land, the Israelites had one last giant obstacle to face: a king named Og of Bashan.
Okay, so get this. The text gives us this one really specific, kind of wild detail about King Og, the size of his bed. It was over 4 meters long. That's about 13.5 feet. Now, that's not just a random fun fact. It's there to paint a picture for us, to show that the Israelites were going up against a truly massive, terrifying enemy. Yeah, based on a bed that big, people estimate King Og himself was probably over 10 feet tall. He was thought to be one of the last of a legendary race of giants, and guess what? The Israelites beat him. Completely. This wasn't just another battle, it was a massive morale boost, a huge sign that God was still on their side.
What's really fascinating, though, are the different rules of war. So against King Og, the Israelites were allowed to take plunder and livestock. But later, when they get to Jericho, the command is totally different: destroy everything. So why the change? Well, the source material suggests God's commands were specifically tailored to the culture they were facing. In some cases, like with certain idolatrous practices, the threat was so great that everything had to be completely wiped out to prevent its influence from spreading.
So you've got this huge victory in the rearview mirror, all this new territory. The logical next step is to start dividing it up. But it's right here in the middle of all the success that the story takes a really sharp and really painful turn. So here's how Moses handles the new land. He gives it to the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. But, and this is a huge but, he attached a critical condition. He told them, you can have this land, but your fighting men can't just settle down yet. You have to cross the Jordan River with the rest of us and keep fighting until the entire promised land is secure. The mission wasn't over, and unity was everything. And this brings us right to the question that hangs over this whole story, the one that's so tough to wrap your head around. Moses, the guy who led them through everything, who negotiated this very deal, why was he the one person who wasn't allowed to cross that finish line? And this is where the story's focus zooms way in. It stops being about a nation's epic journey and becomes about one man's deep personal tragedy. The great leader of a people is now just a man begging for his one deepest wish. You can almost hear the longing in his voice here, can't you? After 40 years staring at desert sand and rock, all he wants is to just see it. To see the beautiful land, the green hills, the mountains of Lebanon. He's not asking for power or credit, just for a glimpse of the home he's been dreaming of his whole life. And God's reply is just gut-wrenching. That is enough. The conversation is over. The answer is no. And according to the source, this all goes back to one specific crucial mistake. At a place called Meribah, the people were desperate for water. God told Moses to speak to a rock, and water would come out. But Moses, in a moment of extreme frustration with the people, struck the rock twice with his staff instead. It was an act of disobedience that publicly misrepresented God's nature, and the consequence for it was absolute. Now, what Moses does next, this is what I think shows his true character. He gets this devastating personal news, and he doesn't collapse. He doesn't wallow. Instead, he immediately shifts his focus away from his own tragedy and toward the future of the nation he loves. He brings Joshua, his successor, forward in front of everyone, and in this really powerful public ceremony, he commissions him. He tells him to be strong and courageous for what's coming next. He puts the success of the mission so far above his own personal disappointment, ensuring that the journey continues, even without him. It's just a profound act of selfless leadership. And this really gets to the core of what Moses' true legacy was. You know, he might not have stepped foot in the physical promised land, but he gave the people something that would last so much longer, the very foundation that their nation would be built on. See, the laws Moses delivered weren't just a bunch of rules. They were a blueprint for a whole new kind of society, one built on justice and mercy, not on revenge. This shared value system, this moral and legal framework, that was the real promised land he brought to his people.
Now, a key part of this law was the command against worshiping idols. The text uses this phrase that can sound a little strange to us today. It describes God as jealous. But the source makes it clear this isn't like human jealousy. It's more about a fierce protection of a fundamental truth, that the praise and glory belonging to the Creator shouldn't be given away to created things, whether that's a statue, an object, or anything else.
So, in the end, this story of Moses leaves us with a really big question about leadership and about life. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, a true legacy isn't measured by whether you personally reach the destination. Maybe it's measured by the foundation you build, so that others can stand on it long after you're gone. It really makes you think, what defines success? Reaching the finish line yourself? Or making sure the race can continue without you?